Your story, Lydia Fenet, is all about being confident, explaining to people how to claim their confidence and how to be the most powerful woman in the room. You're a world-leading auctioneer, you're a best-selling author, a podcast host, and a globally recognized speaker. You are also the CEO of the Lydia Fenet Agency, that is a boutique agency representing best-in-class charity Auctioneers. You raised more than $1 billion for 800 different non-for-profit organizations, which is incredible. You wrote two best-selling books, The Most Powerful Woman in the Room is You and Claim Your Confidence. Your podcast is also called Claim Your Confidence, and you speak around the world to companies about unlocking their sales potential, about empowering people in the workplace, and about the art of public speaking. Lydia, welcome to WeCan. I'm so excited to have you. Tell us how we can all claim our confidence. When I read your bio, I thought, this is the first thing I want to know.
Well, first of all, Stephanie, thank you so much for having me on. I am so honored to be on your podcast. Well, I believe that confidence is not something that we're necessarily born with. I do think it's something almost like exercise that we have to do all the time, making ourselves truly uncomfortable in situations to realize how strong and confident we really can be. And to truly claim your confidence, in my opinion, you need to be doing things that are wildly outside of your comfort zone because a lot of times what you realize is that you are so capable of things that you could never imagine until you try something. And then every time you do it, everything else around it gets a little easier.
Definitely. So, how can we all feel more powerful, especially as women? Which I think, this is much improving. A lot of women are changing the narrative. You're definitely one of them. How can we further change the narrative to really fully believe in ourselves?
I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I tell a story about when I wrote The Most Powerful Woman in the Room is You. I wrote the book based on telling the New York Times that I was writing a book called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room is You. I had not actually written the book. In fact, I had written barely a chapter of the book, which my best friend's agent had sort of said, like, this is fine. It's not really, that great. But the interesting thing was, after I told the New York Times that I was writing this book, I had to then write the book. That was number one. But also, I found myself, especially because this was 2016, this wasn't, current times where you can make statements like that without feeling a lot more uncomfortable than I used to. And I remember I would tell people the name of the book and they would just be like, wow, that's really, that's a book title. And then I, in turn, would also sort of freeze up and say, oh my gosh, I've really overstepped my bounds that I'm using these words about myself. But what I realized really, it was the better part of 18 months of writing the book, publishing the book, going on book tour. All of these things made me use the language, the most powerful woman in the room. The most powerful woman in the room is you. The most powerful woman in the room is me because I wrote the book, right? And all of a sudden, I realized, Stephanie, that people were using that word about me when I wasn't in the room. And all of a sudden, I was getting called to speak for Power Women's Summit and invited on women's power episodes of podcasts. And I remember thinking to myself, why am I getting these calls? And what I realized was that because I was telling people that I was powerful. And to me, the greatest lesson in that is realizing the language that I'm using about myself is ultimately the language people are going to use about me. So if you want to feel powerful and you don't feel powerful, start thinking about what you're saying to other people because they will repeat it back to you. If you say to someone, I'm a bad public speaker, they're not going to invite you to speak.
Yeah.
If you say to someone, I'm getting on those stages and I'm getting out there and I'm improving my public speaking and I think I'm getting better every single time, people will put you on their short list. And the more you do it, the more confident you get. So I extend that to every part of my personality, every part of my life. Just push in every direction, say what I want out loud, be unafraid, and then it comes back. Sometimes not in the way that I think it's going to, but it always comes back to me again.
Lydia, so talk to us about your journey. How in the world did you become so confident and so incredible at your craft of being an auctioneer, of standing up there and leading a pack, because that's effectively what it is, right? So talk to us about those pivotal points in your journey that got you to where you are today.
Truly, I mean, practice is going to be the first thing I always say. People are always like, "How are you so good?" I'm like, "I've done 20,000 hours on stage." So
Wow.
you cannot shortcut the work, period, end of sentence, in anything you do. And that's athletics, that's languages, that's auctioneering. I have been through so many different things on stage that there's pretty much nothing you can't do that I haven't seen before. And that makes me confident on stage. The microphone doesn't work. Well, that's happened a million times. People start heckling in me in the middle. That's happened a million times. Every single time it does, it makes me pause and think, did I handle that well? Did I handle that the way that I should have handled that? And so all of those lessons are ultimately what make me feel like I can get on any stage anywhere in the world with anybody of any stature and feel unafraid and unintimidated because I've perfected the craft. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It just means that I have more practice to do and I can't wait. But in terms of the question you originally asked, which was how I got here, when I was in college, I read an article in Vanity Fair magazine about Christie's auction house. My parents were not art collectors. I didn't know anything about Christie's. I think my brother's girlfriend had interned there years prior, so I might have heard it in a conversation, but it just wasn't in my imagination. I didn't know what took place there. And I will never forget reading this article about Princess Diana's dresses being sold on Park Avenue in New York City, where everybody was all dressed up in black tie to go to this glamorous affair. And there was this auctioneer who stood at the helm in black tie because they were all men and orchestrated the whole thing. And it just, in every part of my life, was like, this is something that sounds amazing. And not even the auctioneering, just the world. This
Mm.
incredibly interesting world where people were highly intellectual and traveled and all the things I sort of thought I wanted to be as a kid. And I applied for an internship, which was closed. And I just kept stalking the internship coordinator until she finally relented and I went in, and then they just couldn't get rid of me. I stayed there for over 23 years. And I became an auctioneer when I was 24. So very quickly I tried out and went in with a big group of guys and, a couple women, and everybody got canceled out except for four of us. And then it just became kind of a numbers game. A lot of them just didn't want to do it late at night. I was young. I didn't have a lot of friends in New York City. I've always been a night owl, and I live in New York City to live in New York City. And leaving my office where I was sitting at a desk all day, getting to put on, a black dress and head out onto a stage somewhere in Manhattan was always appealing. And it just became one of those things that over time and over tons and tons of practice, I got better and better. And then it got to the point where I was the best in my company. And so, when you have that title and you get to train other people, that's the fun part of it. You're passing along what you're learning real time. People would call me and say, "Oh my God, last night the microphone didn't work." And I'm like, "What did you do? I want to hear. Like, tell me what was your strategy? It might not be the same as mine. It might have worked better. Like, give me the tips." And so that's really for me been the journey to where I am. And so when I left Christie's a couple of years ago, I launched a talent agency so that I could bring young auctioneers onto stages when I couldn't be there. And again, as I said, be their resource, be their sort of guiding light when things do go wrong. And hopefully they don't. And the charity, as a result of it, makes a lot of money from a well-trained auctioneer.
Lydia, how fascinating. So, talk to us a little bit about how do people have to think about public speaking? When you have, um, I've done a bit of it and I'm still terrified. I mean, I know now I can do it, but I sweat it big time, days
Yeah.
beforehand. And so I sometimes think, how can we reframe this and make everyone believe that actually they can?
Well, everyone can. And by the way, everybody in the world fears it. They said that the only thing that people fear more than death is public speaking. So you're in good company. I really try to tell people when you think about it, first of all, the easiest way to be a better public speaker is to speak in public. So that's the worst part of hearing that. But truly, what you need to do is have a mental shift and really understand what's happening to you before you get on stage. So you can almost rationalize it. Because at the end of the day, if you ask a really nervous public speaker what they hate about getting on stage, it's usually the minutes before. It's, as you said, it's the
Mm,
days before when they're sweating and their palms are sweating and they feel like there's ice running through their veins. I often say it's the same feeling
exactly.
you get when you pass a cop going 100 miles an hour in the US and you're like, I'm supposed to be going 50 and am I going to get a ticket? And you're glancing around. You can literally feel the adrenaline pouring into your fingers and everything gets fuzzy. And it's interesting because most people are taught and think about that as a fearful thing, right?
Mhm.
However, if you ask an experienced public speaker, I mean, if you ask me about that energy, I would tell you that's energy I need to get on stage. I mean, I get on stage late at night, 10 o'clock at night. I have 3 kids. I have 90 jobs. I mean, last night I was exhausted getting on stage at 9:30 at night. And what I realized about, many hours into doing this job is that is the energy that I'm going to bring to the audience and then I'm going to get it back because all of those nerves are not bad. They're actually great because that's what makes me literally shine on stage. It's just that
Mm.
feeling, that sort of like nervous energy. And so, someone once asked Bruce Springsteen, like, what do you like about public speaking? He's like, oh man, the rush before I get on stage. He's like, I feel it in my fingers, like the tingly. And he's describing the exact same thing that somebody who hates public speaking is describing. But he has shifted mentally into realizing that that's the energy he's going to get from the room because he's going to go out there and he's going to bring it in a big way. So I say to people, in those minutes before, everybody gets the adrenaline rush. I mean, I have been, honestly, Stephanie, I've been backstage with some of the biggest stars in the world. Everyone's doing something right before they go out, clicking a pen, flipping their hair, moving from side to side, just like letting the adrenaline set in. So if you are a nervous public speaker, like before it comes, just be like, all right, I need this. Like, this is good. This feeling that I'm getting right now is good. And this is going to help me get on stage. And then realize, like, the minute you start talking, all of those nerves start to dissipate. So it's basically a brick wall. The minute your mouth opens, it's like the nerves settle, the adrenaline goes down. It's just all leading to that minute.
So I always wonder, there are some people who are just really damn good at it, and you're one of them. And how you literally come on stage and you're already connected to the audience. So I'm wondering when did you sort of understand I've got that, I'm excited to connect with them. And also being an auctioneer, you have to hold yourself and you've got to be so calm because you need to hold the moment and maybe then there is another bid coming. I always think, is this all instinct? Are auctioneers running on instinct? Is this just sort of a feeling in your tummy that you think somebody else is gonna, so how do you hold that? You have to have that pause in you where you're so collected that you're holding the room and you're holding it for a reason. Something else is coming.
Yeah. It's funny. I do think that there's so much power in silence. And, people often ask
Exactly.
me why I train auctioneers or who is going to be a good auctioneer. And what I will always say is the best auctioneer on stage is someone who's truly fearless. And that
Mm,
usually comes with someone who's practiced a lot. It's like an improv comedian. There's nothing you can do to throw them off their game because they're one
yeah,
step ahead of you no matter what.
yeah.
And as an auctioneer, that silence for me is power because I'll sit in it as long as I need to. A lot of times I'll say to people, and I'm just going to stay here long enough to make it uncomfortable. Right? I fully recognize that everybody
That's
there is like shifting in their seat. And I'm just like, and then I just hold and I kind of look around the room because I have all that power at that
yeah.
moment. And when it comes to understanding whether or not the bid is coming, I think that is definitely something that comes with practice because you can see in someone's eye if they're
Mm,
done. You
mm,
can see very subtle gestures, like they'll kind of turn to the side, they stop making eye contact, like whatever they were doing to bid, like their hand has been up, their hand is all of a sudden down, but they're still holding the paddle. That usually means that they're going to bid more. So if you see someone put down a paddle completely, it usually means they're done. So
yeah.
whether they even know they're doing it, as an auctioneer, you can kind of see. Um, but it is interesting. Like somebody will say to me, they'll be like, I thought we were stalled out at 5. I was like, and I knew we were going to get to 20. They're like, how? We stopped at 5 for a while. I'm like, I don't know. You just know the right thing to say. You know how to goad them. But again, a lot of that I do believe just comes with time on stage. And you can tell it from the auctioneers who get up there and are sort of like, I'll wait all day. I'll give you 20 minutes if you need to. And then you sort of like push the sense of urgency to get to the next place. Then you wait a little bit more, It's,
Yeah,
it's all good.
it's an incredible power, but God, that would, that mere thought is already giving me slightly, goosebumps of thinking, oh my God, no, I'm not sure I could do that.
I know it is funny. it is a really funny job. And I have to say, when you see it work, I have a very good guy friend who chairs a board, and he's always like, He's like, I'm literally squirming because you're just sitting and waiting. And he's like, and then all of a sudden, is another $20,000 comes in, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and I'm sitting up there like, I can't wait to see this next $20,000 come in. Yeah, I never get uncomfortable up there. I love it, but it wasn't always like that for me. It used to be for a very long time. I did feel really uncomfortable, and so I think now that I don't, it's even better.
So it's just leaning into the uncomfortableness of the whole thing.
Yes, going back to
Yeah.
what I said, like
Yeah.
that's how you claim your confidence. And
Mm,
I said in my second book, Claim Your Confidence, I think a lot of people believe that confidence comes when you're at the top of the mountain. Like you get confident when you're successful, but that is not true. You get confident when you get knocked down and get back up. And the
mm,
more times you do that, and the more times you fail, and the more times you try, and the less you start to care, that's when you become really confident. And
yeah.
you asked earlier about how I'm so confident on stage. I mean, I have been knocked down and around on that stage for years.
Mm,
Even last night I had an auction where I feel like my performance was really strong. The audience was so quiet, but there wasn't a lot of money in the room. And a
mm,
lot of people, I get off stage and they're like, "Oh God, it was so fun." And like I was like, "Yeah, there wasn't the money in the room. And I can only get the money if it's in the room."
yeah.
And
Yeah.
but 10 years ago that would have broken my soul. I would have been like, "Oh, why didn't I get more?" But
Mm,
now I know just looking at the crowd, this is not a crowd that's going to bid to $50,000 for a lot. This is a crowd that's going to bid to 12. And I have to
yeah.
honor that and make
Yeah.
them feel good about it because they're giving as much as they can give.
Exactly. Yeah. Lydia, so what kind of a leader are you, do you think? How do you lead by example?
I mean, I lead by just getting everyone together.
Mm,
There's a great test that you do called Insights, where that we did in our old company, where everybody was described in four colors. And just to give you a really quick example, the CEO in every color would be, a CEO of a blue would be a Bill Gates, like very analytical, very straightforward. If they were putting together a piece of IKEA furniture, every nut and bolt would be put together perfectly and everything would be laid out on the floor. The green would be Obama, like very community driven, but just sort of like get people together, get their ideas, come to the conclusion. The yellow is like a Richard Branson. They're like, we're going to put together an IKEA shelf. We're putting music on. We have wine and we have cookies. Like, let's all come. And then the red is kind of a Donald Trump, like my way or the highway. None of them in this insights test are good or bad. It's just who you are.
yeah.
But when I was reading them, I was like, I actually don't even need to test. I can tell you I'm an 100% of yellow. I want everyone around me. I love it when people have different ideas about things and they don't
Yeah.
think that I'm right or it doesn't bother me. I want to talk it through. I want to understand it, but at the end of the day I'm going to make a decision and I'm going to move forward with that. But I'm always open for feedback and I believe that leadership comes with connecting people,
Yeah.
getting people together with the best skill set that they can do things and move things forward. I hate red tape. I hate long meetings. I want give me an email with 4 bullet points and I'll come to a conclusion. I don't need a 60-page deck. So that's really the kind of leader I am. And I always have been ever since I was a kid. I'm a team sport kind of person. I love cheering other people on. And I love to watch people succeed in
Yeah.
life. I really do. Like,
Definitely.
I'm really
Yeah.
excited for them.
Yeah. Me too. Definitely. So what makes you feel powerful and aligned?
Oh, gosh, what makes me feel powerful? I think when everything feels like it's moving smoothly in the right direction, I feel powerful. I have 3 kids. I juggle a lot of different things. I'm in the middle of a week where I have 4 auctions at night, and I'm putting on my first summit tomorrow, which is hilarious. I have like 3 interviews and all of these different things today, and I'm like, I wonder why I scheduled everything the day before my summit. But that for me is that's normal. I just sort of heap it on. So I feel powerful when I realize that I have the perspective to get through a week like this week, which, I've done 2 of my own podcasts. I think I've had 6 or 7 interviews. I have 4 auctions. I have this all-day summit tomorrow, and then I'm flying to Texas early morning on Saturday morning for another auction. And when I look on a Tuesday, like my first auction this week was on Tuesday, and I looked at this week and I was like, wow, this is a really stressful week. There's a lot going on. And they're also, the kids are ping ponging around, like trying to get them and move them in the pieces. And each day this week, I really say to myself, Stephanie, like after the auction on Tuesday, I'm like, okay, you did it. Good job. You have 2 podcasts and an auction on Wednesday. Like, done. All right. Thursday's going to look like this. And it's just sort of like hammering these things down,
Mhm.
not getting too overwhelmed. allowing myself to be stressed and like move through that stress, but not freaking out and letting it shut me down. Like that's when I feel powerful, when I'm like, I can handle a lot and still be smiling and still get on an interview with an amazing person and honor her time and my time to talk about all these interesting things. Like that to me feels really powerful.
Yeah, amazing. So, what are your deal breakers?
You know, I've really had to set boundaries because of what I just said, of wanting to always say yes to everything. But when I left Christie's, which for me as a corporate job was a place where everything was a yes. You know, I always wanted to be the yes person. And as a result of that, I was in every meeting, on every committee that I could be on, doing all of the things all of the time. And when I left Christie's and started my own company, I kind of applied that. You know, I had a podcast that I was doing 52 weeks a year. I had auctions all over the country. I was just sort of saying yes to everything. And there were a couple of days for me. I remember 2 years ago, it was really when I was first starting my business, that I was missing. Like my children's school has a carnival called Mayfair, and every parent dreads it, but I always kind of love it. I just think it's kind of sweet. And we live in New York City, and it reminds me of being in Louisiana. It's kind of silly, but you know, the fact that I wasn't there for my kids that day, I was in a hotel room in Miami. I was taking an auction that night, and I remember being there and sort of seeing everybody at Mayfair. And I just said to myself, like, I need to start crossing days off on the calendar that I won't miss, like, no matter what. You know, we had a horrible car accident on Halloween. And this year on Halloween, I was asked to take this massive auction in Las Vegas. And I really just was like, you know what? I can't do it.
Can't do
I would
it.
love to, but like, even if I don't even really see my kids that day, they know I'm here. And if there is a question about like that day, I'm here. And so that is my deal breaker. Time spent away from my family is the
Mm,
deal
yeah.
because kids are growing up quickly. They're 13, 11, and um, almost 9. And, you know, the time you don't get it back. So I'm really trying to just make sure that, you know, if I'm not on a stage and I don't have to be in a different location, I'm here, I'm doing pickup, I'm doing all the things that I enjoy doing.
And what does success look like for you?
You know, I feel like success is where I am now. You
Mm,
know, I can take the auctions that I want to take. I can cross off the days on my calendar that I want to take. You know, I think success for me when I was younger was like, I want to be famous. Like I really did from the age of 4. I was like, I want to be super famous. And now I just feel like I want to be happy, you know, really truly happy and present in all the things I'm doing and not always thinking about the next thing, but really enjoying being on this interview, doing a podcast with someone, doing my summit, which I'm so excited about tomorrow. You know, so I think that that's what success looks like. And then showing up for my family and my friends in a big way and just always them always feeling like they can call me if there's an issue or they need to talk about something and knowing that I'm a resource.
so, talk to us a little bit about your plans and goals. You have a big summit coming up. You're doing lots of auctions every week, it looks like. What are you what is your vision for the next years?
Well, this summit for me is really exciting. I built this off of I wouldn't say failures, but I built this off of feedback from something else that I'd kind of tried. And we talk about, you know, trying things and failing. I had been asked by a really beautiful resort to do a retreat right when I went out on
Mm,
my own. I thought, yeah, that would be fun. I love traveling. I love hotels. Like this could be fun. And so I designed a beautiful 4-day retreat at this absolutely stunning property. And I remember I launched it and I was like, this is going to sell out. There are only like 15 or 16 spots. It's incredibly expensive and it's 4 days. And, you know, at the very beginning, I think I had 2 RSVPs and I was like, oh, I feel like it's not as many people as you needed to retreat. You know, and over time, we ended up with 11 people, but it was really difficult to get everybody there. And then they asked me to do it again. So I did it again and kind of reformatted and got sort of a similar result. And this summer, kind of talking about like not doing all the things. Like I've scaled back my podcast, so now I do a capsule of 12, which launches next week instead of doing 52. And the auctions, I travel less. I try to do more New York based than I do traveling. And so during the summer, I was able to actually really take some time off and just sort of in the still of an afternoon in July, I played tennis that morning. And I was just kind of like thinking about the retreat and the whole model of it. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a second. The women who come to me for advice are usually women somewhere in the business world where they've either been a mom full time and they want to go back, or they've been a career woman and they want to make a transition, or they want to start a business. Like these are the women who come to me. why am I doing a 4-day retreat? Like these women don't have 4 days, they barely have an afternoon. And why am I doing this not in New York City, which is the place that I've lived in for 25 years with all of the resources and the connections that I have?
Yeah.
And, when I always used to say in strategic partnerships when I ran a team at Christie's that if something was meant to happen, it doesn't feel like a square peg in a round hole. It just slips in
Mm,
effortlessly, right?
yeah.
And that was what happened with the summit. The minute I launched it, I started selling tickets. I sold out as of this morning. It's tomorrow. I mean, the sponsors that have come in are all connections of mine from years of running sponsorships at Christie's, but also friends. And it's just been the most exciting and rewarding time. And that for me feels like a direction that I want to go into. I would love to do this again in different cities in the US and sort of pilot it out. But this is what I love to do. And again, as I said, it's not a 4-day thing, it's one day. You come in the morning, you leave in the evening. I'm going to feed you lots of snacks and lots of coffee so you can be all jazzed up and everything's interactive and fun and exciting. And that to me is really what I feel like a lot of my next year is going to be doing. And then I sold my first book to Hulu. So the pilot script has just been written. It's sitting in my inbox. I've pushed it to Saturday to read it after I finish the summit because I don't want to be in it when I'm doing the summit. So that's what I'm going to do on the plane down to Austin when I'm flying down for the auction on Saturday is read that. So yeah, so that's really excited. I'll be an executive producer on that when that all comes to fruition. And that's kind of what I'll be working on. And then just the auctions. I mean, the auctions for me it's like a second skin. I love it so much. It takes very little effort for me to get on a stage and raise a ton of money and have fun with an audience. That for me that's the best. I mean, that's what I get to do.
Lydia, it sounds so exciting. I'm so excited for you. So, what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from your story?
I would say to people, I think for a long time, especially when I was in a corporate world, I was really concerned about what other people thought of me. I was really concerned about what people thought about what I was doing, about my career path, about the decisions that I was making, about failing or falling flat. And when I left and sort of started this new thing, I realized that there's a huge part of that's going to be all of those things. Like those fears will come true. Some people are going to hate what I do. Some people are not going to do these things. And ultimately, I'm not living my life for them. I'm living it for me. And so what I would say to you is if you are worried about other people's perceptions of you, or if you're worried about other people's ideas of what you're doing being right or wrong, distance yourself. Like look within, find what lights you up. You think I'm excited. It's because I am excited because I'm passionate about the things that I do. And I feel like the people I surround myself with are in the same place. Like they're succeeding in their jobs and their careers because they found their passion. And so I would say to anyone who's listening, like find your passion and move towards that because you won't run out of energy if you're passionate. You might get tired, but you're not going to run out of energy. And that for me is really what lights me up.
I love it, Lydia. Thank you so much for leading by example at WeCan today. I want everyone to go out and buy the books. The Most Powerful Woman in the Room is You and Claim Your Confidence. Listen to your podcast. I will look out for the next summit. It sounds so exciting. I want to be there.
Yes,
And
come. You
all
should.
the
People are flying in
very
from
best.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you again for having me on. Such an honor.